The great chamber of the Galactic Council was built to overwhelm. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds drifted beneath it, held in place by artificial gravity fields. Rows of floating seats curved around a central platform, each seat shaped to fit a different species. Light from distant stars filtered through the transparent walls, making the room feel eternal and unchanging. For thousands of cycles, this chamber had decided the fate of worlds. On this day, it was quiet. Human delegates entered without fanfare. No guards marched before them. No banners followed. They wore simple, dark uniforms, unmarked except for a small symbol of Earth at the collar. There were only 6 of them. At their center walked Ambassador Taiyang Park. His steps were calm and even. His face showed no anger, no pride, and no fear. He had walked this path many times before, standing in this chamber to argue for peace, fairness, and cooperation. Today he carried no prepared speech. Beside him walked Hannah Lee, her tablet held loosely in one hand. She glanced around the chamber, noting who was present and who was not. Several council members leaned toward one another, whispering. Others watched the humans with open boredom. The session bell rang. Deep and resonant, High Counselor Varric floated forward, his long limbs folding neatly as he addressed the chamber. This emergency session of the Galactic Council is now in order, Varric said. The matter before us concerns repeated human noncompliance with Council oversight protocols. A ripple of agreement moved through the chamber. Taiyang did not react. Varric continued. Despite numerous warnings, humanity has failed to submit its military deployments, trade routes, and research initiatives for Council review. This behavior undermines galactic stability. One delegate laughed softly, another spoke loudly, his voice sharp. They have grown too confident. They forget who granted them access to Council space. Taiyang waited. Hannah tapped her tablet once, then lowered it. Varric turned his many eyes toward the human delegation. Ambassador Park, you may respond. The chamber expected resistance. They expected arguments, demands, or carefully worded threats. Humans had always fought hardest when cornered. Taiyang stepped forward. His voice was steady, calm, and clear. Humanity acknowledges the Council's concerns, he said. Several council members leaned forward, pleased. Taiyang continued. However, humanity will no longer participate in Council oversight, sessions, or enforcement structures. The chamber froze. Varric blinked. You mean, you refuse? Taiyang shook his head gently. No, we are not refusing. We are withdrawing. For a moment there was silence. Then laughter spread through the chamber, light and dismissive. Withdrawing. A delegate scoffed. From what? You exist within Council space. Taiyang met the speaker's gaze. Not anymore. Hannah stepped forward. All human representatives will leave Council stations within one standard cycle. All joint operations will end immediately. Varric's tone hardened. You cannot simply walk away from your obligations. Taiyang's eyes were calm. We already have. Another delegate spoke sharply. This is emotional theater. Humanity depends on our trade routes. Your fleets rely on shared infrastructure. Taiyang nodded once. That was true. A low murmur spread. Varric leaned forward. Ambassador, reconsider. This path leads to isolation. Taiyang paused. For the first time, his expression changed. Not anger, not fear, only something tired. For generations, he said, humanity has supported this council. We stabilized borders. We mediated wars. We protected worlds that could not protect themselves. Hannah raised her tablet, projecting records into the air. Dates, systems, quiet interventions. We did so without credit, Taiyang continued. Without control, and often without thanks, Delegate interrupted. That was your choice. Taiyang nodded again. Yes, and now this is also our choice. Varric's voice sharpened. If you leave, you abandon the galaxy. Taiyang looked around the chamber at the endless seats, the ancient power, the confidence carved into every surface. No, he said softly. We stop holding it together. The words settled slowly like dust. The session bell rang again, signaling the end. Human delegates turned and walked out. No guards stopped them. No. Threats followed. The chamber buzzed with amused conversation as the doors sealed shut. "Let them go," one delegate said. "They will return." Barek watched the doors longer than the others. For the first time in centuries, uncertainty flickered across his many eyes. Far from the council chamber, in quiet corridors and distant systems, the withdrawal had already begun. Commander Doyon Choi stood on the bridge of a human peacekeeping cruiser. The ship hovered near a disputed system that had known stability only because humans stood between its rivals. "Confirm transfer complete," he said. "All civilian advisors are." Claire, an officer, replied. Doyon stared at the stars. "Disengage." The cruiser turned away. Across the galaxy, similar orders were carried out. No alarms, no attacks. Human ships simply left their posts. Trade hubs noticed delays. Border worlds noticed silence. The systems that had leaned on humanity began to feel the weight of standing alone, back on Earth. News of the council session spread quietly. There were no celebrations, no speeches, only preparation. Hannah Lee stood in a briefing room, watching data streams shift and fade. "It's done," she said. Tay nodded. "Then we move forward. Do you think they understand?" She asked. Yang looked out toward the stars, where human signals were already disappearing from shared networks. "No," he said. "Not yet." And far above the Galactic Council chamber, the stars continued to burn. Unaware that something ancient had just been removed from beneath the galaxy's feet. The galaxy noticed humanity's absence before it understood it. At first, it was small things. A trade convoy arrived late. A navigation relay failed to update. A border patrol did not answer its scheduled report. Council clerks marked these issues as routine delays and moved on. But the delays did not stop. On the edge of council space, the planet Lyris depended on human trade ships for food stabilizers. When the ships did not arrive, local governors sent polite inquiries. No answer came. After 3 cycles, ration systems began to fail. Elsewhere, shared research station, powered by human reactors, shut down cleanly and without warning. The lights faded. The gravity softened. Non-human scientists were escorted away by human crews, treated with care and respect, then left at the nearest safe port. No messages followed, no explanations were sent. It was as if humanity had quietly erased itself from every shared system. Commander Doyon Choi watched the final countdown from the bridge of his ship. The station behind them, once a busy center of cooperation, floated dark and silent. "Final check complete," an officer said. "Any distress signals?" Doyon asked. "None." Doyon nodded. "Then we're done here." The ship turned away, engines glowing softly as it slipped into faster space. Doyon felt no pride, no anger, only a steady sense of closure. For years, his crews had stood between rival powers, absorbing insults and blame to keep the peace. Now they were finally leaving. On a distant council world, a minor dispute flared into violence. 2 species argued over mining rights on a shared moon. Normally, human mediators would have arrived within hours, placing calm voices and neutral fleets between the sides. This time, no one came. Shots were fired. The conflict spread faster than expected. Council security forces arrived late and divided. Each faction accused the other of provocation. Old grudges resurfaced. Within days, the moon burned. Back at the Galactic Council, emergency sessions multiplied. "Hi." Counselor Varek listened as report after report filled the chamber. Trade instability in 6 sectors. Border skirmishes escalating. Human infrastructure no longer responding to access requests. Clenched his limbs tightly. "Send another summons to Earth." "It has already been sent," an aide replied. No response. A delegate sneered. "They are pretending to be offended." This silence is a tactic. Another voice spoke quieter. Or it is a farewell. The chamber fell still. On Earth, there were no celebrations. No public broadcasts declaring victory or independence. Cities continued their routines. Ships continued their quiet returns. Hannah Lee walked through a logistics center where screens showed human assets withdrawing in perfect order. No chaos, no panic. We've disengaged from 87% of joint systems, an analyst said. And the rest? Hannah asked, pending final civilian transfers. Hannah nodded. No one gets left behind. That rule had been repeated so often it no longer needed saying. In another system, Yuna Kim stood beside a non-human family boarding a transport ship. The child clutched her hand, confused and afraid. Where are you going? The child asked. Yuna knelt and smiled gently. Somewhere quiet. Will you come back? Yuna hesitated. Then she answered honestly. I don't know. The transport lifted off, carrying its passengers to safety. YUNA watched until it vanished. The council called the withdrawal irresponsible. News networks called it selfish. But in private, fear began to grow. Systems, once held stable by human supply chains, started to crack. Food shortages followed trade gaps. Pirate groups returned to roots humans once. Protected worlds that had never built. Their own defenses realized too late how much they had relied on. Quiet human fleets. Mirae Song sat alone in an archive chamber beneath the council complex. She had access few others used. Old data, old logs. Forgotten records. She had always believed humanity was useful. Now she began to understand they had been essential. Record after record showed human interventions, never announced. Silent fleet movements that prevented wars. Emergency evacuations erased from official histories. Economic collapses delayed just long enough for the council to claim credit. Marae's hands trembled as she scrolled. They were everywhere, she whispered. Above her, the council argued over blame. They are forcing us into chaos. One delegate shouted. They will return when they feel the pressure, another said. But cycles passed. Humanity did not return. Instead, more systems went dark. On the edge of known space, human ships regrouped beyond council reach. They did not form armadas. They did not raise banners. They simply reorganized. Doyon. Choi stood in a quiet briefing room as Taeyong Park appeared on a secure screen. All sectors report complete withdrawal. Doyen said. Taeyang inclined his head. Any incidents? None involving us. That is good. Doyon hesitated. Sir, do you think they will understand what they lost? Taeyang was silent for a moment. They already do, he said. They just won't admit it yet. Beyond the council's borders, humanity began building something new. Not an empire, not a threat. A space where no one ruled by force. A space where help was given by choice. Not demand. Back in council space, alarms echoed through the chamber as another emergency was announced. This time, there was no laughter, only fear, and the growing realization that humanity's quiet walk away was not an act of weakness. It was the removal of the last support holding the galaxy upright. The first system to fall did not fall in flames. It fell in confusion on the world of Keln. Trade schedules stopped matching reality. Ships arrived without cargo. Others never arrived at all. Automated ports waited for human clearance codes that would never come. Dock workers argued with machines that did not answer. Within days, food prices doubled. Within weeks, power grids began to fail. The local council governor sent urgent requests for aid. He demanded explanations. He threatened penalties. No reply came. The message logs showed only silence where human responses used to be. As panic grew, old political enemies began blaming one another. Accusations replaced planning. Meetings ended in shouting, and still, no humans appeared in the Galactic Council chamber. The mood had changed, the seats were still full, But the laughter was gone. High Counselor Varric floated above the central platform, listening to overlapping reports of failure. Another. Border conflict has escalated. A major shipping lane has collapsed. Council enforcement fleets are overstretched. Varric raised his limbs for silence. We will restore order, the delegate snapped back. With what forces? The question hung in the air. For the first time, the council faced the truth it had avoided. Their fleets were strong on paper but slow in action, their commanders argued. Their systems lacked unity. The humans had provided that. Unity quietly, without command, without control. Marae's song stood at the edge of the chamber, her thoughts heavy. The data she had uncovered refused to leave her mind. Human records showed patterns the council had never wanted to see. Human fleets moving before crises were announced. Human trade adjustments that prevented starvation before shortages came public. They had been watching everything and asking nothing in return. Marae stepped forward. We underestimated them. Several delegates turned sharply. They did not abandon us, she continued. They stopped correcting our mistakes. A murmur spread. One delegate scoffed. You defend them now? Marae met his gaze. I defend reality. The council dismissed her concerns. Outside the chamber, the galaxy burned slowly. Pirate groups returned to regions long kept safe by human patrols. They tested defenses, found them weak, and spread quickly. Refugee ships crowded neutral space. Worlds that once argued about influence now begged for protection. But humanity did not answer. Beyond council borders, human space felt different. Ships moved with purpose but without urgency. Construction platforms formed new stations far from old trade routes. Colonies focused inward, strengthening supply chains and learning to rely on one another alone. Taiyang. Park observed reports from a quiet command center. They are blaming us, an aide said. They always did. Taiyang replied calmly. Some worlds are collapsing. Taiyang closed his eyes briefly. We warned them this day would come. He remembered countless meetings where humans asked the council to build shared responsibility. Each time, the council chose control instead. Now, control was all they had, and it was not enough. On a distant station once protected by human fleets, violence erupted. Council forces arrived late and uncertain. A misunderstanding led to a single shot. The station burned. News of the disaster spread fast. Citizens across council space began asking dangerous questions. Why were humans always there before? Why did problems grow so fast now? Why had the council never prepared for this? Protests formed on core worlds. Marae's song watched public feeds with growing dread. The truth was close to the surface. She returned to the archives. Deeper this time, she uncovered sealed votes, private agreements, and classified plans. Documents that showed the council intended to reduce humanity's independence while keeping their labor and fleets. The plan had been slow, careful, and cruel. They never saw us as partners, Marae whispered. She copied everything in council space. Fear replaced pride. Delegates argued late into cycles. Voices strained and desperate. We must force them back, one shouted. With what authority? Another replied, outside another system fell into chaos. On Earth, the public still received no dramatic speeches. Leaders spoke plainly. Supply systems were strengthened. Borders were secured quietly. Humanity prepared not for war, but for endurance. Doyon Choi stood aboard a newly built station. Watching ships dock in calm order. They're turning on each other, an officer said. Double quotes. Yes, Doyon replied. They always do when the support disappears. Do you regret it? Doyon considered the question. He thought of the insults endured, the sacrifices ignored, the lives spent holding the galaxy together. No, he said. I regret that it took this long. Back at the council, emergency alarms rang again. This time, the chamber emptied in panic. Varric remained alone for a moment, staring at the stars beyond the glass walls. For the first time, He wondered if the council itself had already been judged, and if humanity's silence was not cruelty, but mercy. Truth did not arrive with a speech, it arrived as files. They appeared first on small networks, shared quietly between analysts and journalists. Then they spread to public channels, copied again and again before anyone could stop them. Council seals marked every page. Dates, votes, plans across council space. Screens filled with records that had never been meant to be seen. Myray. Song stood alone in the archive chamber as the last transfer completed. Her hands felt numb. She had checked the files a dozen times, confirming every signature, every authorization. They were real. The council had planned to limit humanity's freedom while keeping human fleets, trade systems, and labor bound to council command. Humanity would remain responsible for stability, but lose its voice. It was control without accountability. Myray closed her eyes. They deserved to know. Within hours, the reaction was explosive. Citizens across dozens of worlds gathered in streets and public halls. Some shouted in anger. Others stood in stunned silence, reading the same lines again and again. So this is why humans left, one voice said on a broadcast. They were never equals, another replied. On the council's core world, protests surrounded the central spire. Security forces hesitated, unsure who they were meant to protect. Inside the Galactic Council chamber, chaos reigned. High Counselor Varric called for order, but few listened. You hid this from us, a delegate accused. You voted for it. Two, another shouted back. Blame passed from seat to seat like a disease. Varric felt something unfamiliar settle into his thoughts. Fear not of humanity, of judgment. Council issued an official summons to Earth, urgent and pleading. The message was sent on every known channel. Hours passed, then days, no response came. On Earth, the summons was received, logged, and archived. Tane Park read it once, then set it aside. They want forgiveness, Hannah Lee said quietly. They want relief, Taiyang replied. Not responsibility. Will we answer? Taiyang shook his head. They already have their answer. Beyond council space, human settlements continued to grow. Ships arrived carrying families, supplies, and hope. New trade routes formed, built on agreement instead of command. There were no banners, no declarations, only work. Back in council territory. Systems failed faster now. Without humans to balance decisions, the council overreacted. Fleets were sent too late or too early. Sanctions collapsed fragile economies. Old rivals used the chaos to settle scores, one by one.
Ow.
Member worlds began ignoring council orders. What authority do you have left? A governor demanded during a public address. The question spread. Council authority weakened with every cycle. Doyan. Choi monitored the situation from afar. He watched reports of protests, resignations, and defections. They are turning inward, an officer observed. Yes, Doyan said. This is what happens when power loses trust. Do we intervene? Doyan shook his head. We promised ourselves we would not. Hardest part was not leaving. It was staying away. Myray. Song was arrested. Council security found her in the archive chamber, surrounded by empty data racks. You leaked classified material, an officer said. Yes, Myray replied calmly. I revealed the truth. She was taken away as crowds outside the council's spire chanted her name. Her trial was swift. The verdict was never delivered. Before it could be announced, several council members resigned publicly, releasing their own statements of guilt. Others fled their worlds, the council fractured. On a distant colony, Jisuhan stood at an observation window, watching new habitats take shape. They are asking for help, an aide said. Jisu nodded. They always do when it is too late. Should we listen? Jisu's voice was gentle but firm. Listening does not mean returning. In council space, the idea of judgment took hold, not judgment from humanity, from history, from their own people. Worlds held referendums. Alliances broke. The councils once eternal. Chambers stood half empty during sessions that no longer mattered. Varric remained. He watched as power slipped through, his grasp like dust. He remembered laughing when humans walked away. Now, there was no laughter left. One final message was drafted by the council. It was not a demand. It was not a threat. It was an apology. It was never sent beyond the reach of council space. Humanity continued forward, not as rulers, but as a people finally free to choose their own path, and behind them, the galaxy faced the judgment. It had delayed for far too long. The end did not come with fire, it came with quiet, the galactic. Council chambers stood nearly empty. Seats once filled with voices and power now floated unused. The great lights dimmed to save energy. No one bothered to restore them. High Counselor Varric remained alone. He had refused to leave. From his place above the central platform, he watched stars drift past the transparent walls. For the first time in his long life, the galaxy felt large and uncaring. Reports no longer arrived. There was no system left to control. The council had not been destroyed. It had simply been ignored. Across former council space, worlds chose their own paths. Some formed small alliances. Others closed their borders and focused inward. A few fell into conflict, learning hard lessons without someone else to stop them. History moved forward without permission, far beyond those worlds. Humanity continued building. New stations orbited quiet stars. Trade flowed between human colonies without demand or threat. Decisions were slow, careful, shared. Humanity did not rush. They had learned the cost of carrying others. Jisoo. Han walked through a growing settlement where children played beneath artificial skies. There were no statues, no symbols of conquest, only homes. An aide approached her. Another message from former council worlds. Jisoo did not stop walking. Archive it. They are asking for guidance. Jisoo paused. She looked at the children, laughing without knowing the weight of the past. We can give advice, she said. Not authority. The aide nodded. That was the line humanity would not cross again. On Earth, Taiyang Park stood before a wide window overlooking the planet. Ships moved in steady lines, arriving and departing without ceremony. Hannah Lee joined him. It's over, she said. Taiyang nodded. Yes, they will write stories about this, Hannah said. They will say, we abandoned them. Taiyang smiled faintly. They will say many things. What will history say? Taiyang considered the question. That we chose ourselves, he said, in former council space. The truth settled slowly. Humanity had never ruled the galaxy. They had supported it. When that support ended, everything built on it had to stand alone. Some worlds adapted, some failed. None could deny why. Murray. Song was released quietly. There was no trial, no apology. She returned to a smaller world far from the old power centers. There, she began teaching history to young minds who asked honest questions. Why did the humans leave? A student asked. Murray answered simply, because they were not respected. The student nodded, as if that explained everything. It did, on a distant station once guarded by human fleets. An old memorial stood forgotten. Names carved into metal plates reflected faint starlight. They were the names of human crews who had died. Protecting worlds not their own, no ceremonies were held. Humanity did not ask for thanks. They never had, Commander. Doyan Choi visited that station alone. He stood before the memorial for a long time. We're done, he said softly. The silence did not argue. Beyond the last borders of old space, humanity sent a final signal into the dark. It was not a warning, it was a record. A simple message carried on open channels. We chose peace. We chose dignity. We chose to walk away. The signal drifted outward, not meant to be answered. Back in the empty council chamber, Varric finally left his seat. His steps echoed in the vast space. He looked once more at the stars. Only now did he understand. Humanity had not punished the galaxy. They had trusted it, and trust, once broken, was not easily given again. The chamber lights shut down one by one. The council passed into history, and somewhere far beyond its reach. Humanity moved forward not as saviors, not as rulers, but as equals who had finally learned when to let go. Time moved on. It did not wait for apologies. It did not wait for understanding. In the wide space where the Galactic Council once ruled, new patterns formed. Some worlds learned to cooperate without command. Others struggled, then learned the hard way. A few disappeared from the maps, not destroyed, but abandoned by trade and travel. The galaxy became quieter, not as peaceful, just honest. On a small world near the edge of former council space, a market reopened after years of fear. Traders argued over prices. Children ran between stalls. No council banners hung above the streets. People solved problems, face to face. It was slower, it was harder, but it was theirs, far beyond those worlds. Humanity continued its work. Ships arrived at new settlements with careful timing. Supplies were counted twice. Plans were checked and checked again. No one wanted to repeat the past. Human leaders spoke often about limits. We help when asked, one said. And only if respect comes with it, another replied. Those rules were written into every agreement. On a quiet station orbiting a blue star, Taiyang Park met with delegates from a small alliance of worlds. They did not kneel. They did not demand, they asked. We want to learn how you organized your trade, one delegate said. Tane nodded. We can share methods. Will you protect us? Another asked. Taiyang answered carefully. We can train you to protect yourselves. There was no anger in his voice, only clarity. The delegates accepted the terms. For the first time in many cycles, agreements ended without hidden control. Hannah Lee watched from the side, noting how different these meetings felt. No threats. No pressure. This is slower, she said later. Yes, Taiyang agreed. That is the price of fairness. On Earth, life felt lighter. Not easier, but lighter. Resources once sent outward were used to heal old cities and strengthen distant colonies. Young people trained not for endless patrols, but for building, science. In careful defense, humanity still watched the stars, but no longer with the weight of responsibility for everyone else. My Ray. Song published a small book. It was not dramatic. It did not accuse it. Simply listed facts. What humans had done? What? The council had planned. What happened when trust broke? The book spread. Quietly, teachers used it. Leaders read it. Some hated it. Others learned. On a distant outpost, Commander Doyon Choi trained young officers. He spoke less than before. When he did speak, they listened. Strength is not standing everywhere, he told them. It is knowing where not to stand. The officers remembered that in former council space, stories changed. At first, humanity was blamed. Later, it was debated. Much later, it was understood. Older citizens remembered the quiet years when borders were calm and trade was steady. Younger ones asked why those years ended. The answers were no longer hidden. On the ruins of an old council relay, a simple marker was placed by travelers. No. Names, no symbols. Only words carved into metal. Power. Borrowed is never owned. Passed by and slowed to read it. Some continued. On. Some turned back. Humanity did not watch every outcome. They did not need to. They had made their choice beyond mapped space. Human explorers reached stars no one had claimed. They did not plant flags. They mapped paths, then returned. Still nothing out there? Someone asked. Nothing that wants ruling, came the reply. That was enough. one quiet cycle. A message arrived from a former council world. It was not a plea. It was not a demand. It was a report. "We solved our border dispute," it said. "Without outside force, we thought you should know." Taeyong read the message and smiled. "Archive it," he said. "Why?" an aide asked. "Because success does not need applause." The galaxy continued. So did humanity, not as the center, not as the shield, but as one voice among many, finally speaking by choice, and in that quiet balance, the stars seemed a little farther apart, and a little more honest than before. The galaxy did not stay. It's quiet forever. It never does. Beyond the settled paths and mapped stars, something began to move. At first, it was only small signs. Listening posts picked up strange echoes. Deep space probes vanished without failure signals. Long-range sensors returned shadows where there should have been nothing. No alarms were raised, not yet. In former council space, most worlds were too busy with their own problems to notice. Trade was slower. Borders were fragile. Trust was still learning how to exist without force. But in human space, the data was seen carefully, quietly, on a monitoring station near the outer dark. An analyst paused over her screen. "Sir," she said, "this pattern doesn't match any known drift." The officer leaned closer. "Run it again." The pattern remained. Not random, intentional. The report reached Taeyong Park within hours. He read it in silence. "So it begins." Hannah Lee said. "Yes," Taeyong replied. "And this time, it is not about the council." Humanity did not panic. They had learned patience. Exploration ships were rerouted. Sensors were extended. No fleets were launched. No warnings were broadcast. Observation came first, in a distant system once ignored. A small human research vessel detected movement near a dead star. Shapes formed and vanished. Bending light in ways that made instruments struggle. The crew watched. They did not fire. They did not run. They recorded whatever was out there, did not speak, but it watched back. Meanwhile, in former council space, trouble returned in a familiar form. A border dispute flared between two weakened worlds. Old fear drove quick decisions. Fleets moved without full understanding. Shots were exchanged. The conflict threatened to grow. This time, something different happened. A neutral message arrived. It was not from the council. It was not from humanity. It was from a small alliance of worlds that had learned cooperation the hard way. "Stand down," the message said. "Talk first." The fleets hesitated, and then they listened. The conflict slowed, far away. Doyon Choi watched the report with quiet approval. "They're learning," he said. "Yes," replied a younger officer. "Without us." That was always the goal. The unknown space. The unknown presence moved closer. Human sensors now confirmed it. Not a fleet, not a single. Mind something different, something old. Taeyang convened a limited council of human leaders. No speeches were made. Only data shared. "We do not know their intent," one leader said. "Then we do not assign one," Taeyong replied. "We observe," Hannah added. "And we do not offer protection to others without consent." The rule held. Messages were sent to nearby worlds, not warnings. "Information, something unknown exists beyond your borders," the message said. "We are watching it. You may do the same." Some worlds ignored the message. Others prepared. None were ordered. The unknown presence finally acted. A probe was taken, not destroyed. Returned, it came back altered. Its data rearranged into patterns no one had seen before. Not hostile, curious, human scientists studied it for weeks. "It's a question," one said. "About what?" another asked. "About who we are," humanity answered. The only way it knew how. With truth. A simple record was sent into the dark. Not a threat. Not a claim. It showed humanity's history, its mistakes, its choice to walk away from power, its decision to let others stand alone. The message ended with no demand, only silence. In former council space, The stars felt closer again. Worlds spoke more often. Not because they were forced, because they remembered what silence had cost. My Ray. Song watched these changes from her quiet home. She smiled when she saw alliances form without flags or chains. The galaxy is growing up, she said to herself, far beyond all borders. The unknown presence paused. It did not retreat, it did not attack, it waited. Humanity waited too, not as guards, not as rulers, but as witnesses. Whatever came next would not be decided by one power holding the galaxy together. It would be decided together, and for the first time, the galaxy was ready for that.